Louisville was a popular pick to make the second round, and I think the most talked about thing from the South region may have been Auburn having to go play a road game against Louisville and Kentucky in the second round. Kind of forgot the part where Louisville had to win the game to get to the second round. This was a very good Creighton team that really showed it in the second part of the first half, the second quarter, if you will, really put some distance between themselves and Louisville. Held on, kind of cruised in the second half for an 89-75 victory for the Blue Jays, Riley. How did they get this done? Like what allowed them to create what looked like a really tight game on paper into a 14-point victory?
Man, I thought this one came down completely to the role players for Creighton. Like we know that Kalk is the star. And even with like his stardom, he had a quiet stat line game, I guess. Only 14.6 boards, 4 blocks. I thought he was everywhere when his team needed to be. Like he was controlling the paint. He was like a vintage defensive performance. He had that nasty block on Rain Smith that unfortunately resulted in like I think Smith re-aggravating his injury. But still, if you watch the game, you can tell like he is the center of everything on both ends of the court. But I thought both Ashworth and Neal were awesome in this one. Jemiah Neal was one we talked about briefly in the preview and kind of hinted at how, going into this year, my perception of him was this inefficient Bobby Hurley player who wouldn't do a ton for Creighton. And I think it points to just how good of an offensive mind McDermott is, the actions he runs, the counters he runs, and the things that he can script to get to like play into his guys' strengths. With Neal's career high 29 points tonight, and next to him in the backcourt, I thought Ashworth was so good. Like that first half, especially, it just felt like he was doing whatever he wanted to. He was
Yeah.
knocking down threes when Louisville couldn't hit anything. He got to the hoop a couple times, had some really crafty finishes. And when you factor in those two guys, you factor in Jackson McAndrew hit 3 threes in his first NCAA tournament. Great, like glue guy connected performance from him as well. All three of those guys bringing their A games and doing exactly what Creighton needed to.
Mhm.
They're a better team than I think a lot of people realize. I think Kalk is a better player than a lot of people remember just because they weren't ranked for most of the year. Like
Right.
it I don't know. It's one of those games where watching it play out, I was kicking myself for picking Louisville. Like, man, how am I like Creighton has won a tournament game each of the last 4 seasons. McDermott's a really good coach. Pat Kelsey is still looking for a March victory. Like this should have been more obvious than it was, you know?
Yeah, I think Pat Kelsey will get one. Like he overachieved with this team. Like with the injuries, he overachieved with this team. Losing a game to a very good Creighton team does not, I think, stamp him as one of these guys that can't win in March. Now, if it keeps happening, well, that's a conversation for future years potentially. We talked about in the preview though. This Creighton team's good. They were second best team in the Big East
Yeah,
all year long. Jemiah Neal, you mentioned 29 points, 12 boards and 6 assists as
big
well.
time.
We talked about McAndrew in particular in the preview, hitting some threes. I think if you would have gone to Pat Kelsey and you were like, okay, Kalkbrenner is only going to have 14 points and 6 boards, I think he would take that.
Hmm.
But it was Ashworth and Neal outplayed Hepburn and Edwards
Yeah.
pretty drastically.
That was probably the most unexpected part. I think even with Louisville, you can't use the depth excuse. I'm glad, like I thought Kels did a like I'm calling him Kels. That's what they call him in coaching circles. I love how Kels did a great job with this team. Like he got them playing collectively at such a high level. But I think Creighton's depth is worse than Auburn's. They had 4 bench points. Like I think Fedor Zugic is a pretty good backup point guard. Everybody else, Frederick King, Isaac Trout, like kind of seen that movie before. Not really high on those guys. I
Yeah.
just thought like the role players in the starting lineups were significantly better than Louisville's, and yeah, it kind of it shows in the box score, but yeah, credit a ton to those dudes for really silencing a crowd as well. Like that Louisville crowd was silent aside from that one stretch in the second half where the Cards rallied a little bit, but it's too little, too late.
Trout came in when Kalkbrenner had like a bloody nose or like a cut on his nose, some issue there, and it was clear that they were like, we need to get him as little involved in the game as we possibly can while he was out there. Um,
Poor
I want.
Trout, man. He was a big time recruit once upon a time.
I know, and it's probably unfair, but I don't think he was ready. Or
Yeah.
Louisville saw it as an opportunity to attack him. Let's put it that way.
Well, I thought Frederick King got attacked worse. I
He
was just
did.
get the
Yeah.
like y'all got to figure something out because these two guys. I mean, if you want to
Yeah,
stand a chance against Auburn, like I don't know about
yeah.
that.
Well, we'll talk about that. We have a full preview for that game up on the channel. One thing that struck me with Louisville, and I
Hmm.
tweeted this out because it hadn't really struck me since November when they played Tennessee, but that was first real big game they were playing, and we were excited for who they had, and there were different players available in that game before injuries, and Tennessee got out to a little bit of a lead, but what could have been just like a little run kept snowballing into this giant run because Louisville was just like running down and shooting threes, taking bad shots, not helping themselves.
Hmm.
That happened again in this game where Creighton started getting a little bit of separation. There's a 5 point lead, 6 point lead, 8 point lead, and Louisville's just coming down and shooting up the first thing that they get. And they're missing, and Creighton's going the other way, getting an easy bucket, and it snowballed on itself to where you looked up and you're like, oh, it's a 15 point game. I
And go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I think that's an adjustment that Pat Kelsey has to make.
Hmm. I'm with you completely on that. I even think, you go to the end of that first half where Hepburn has that really nice three he hits at the buzzer, and it's like, okay, 15 is manageable. I want to say Creighton scored like the first four, maybe 5 points even of the second half. It was one of those things where it felt like, okay, Louisville's got it close. I actually misspoke. Louisville hit they hit a jumper from Fat Edwards to start the second half, but then Creighton pushed it back out to 19 in the blink of an eye. And it seemed like what could have been such a momentum shifter, it was all for naught. And yeah, they did just let it get out of hand quickly.
Hmm. They really did. They really did. Last thing on this with Creighton. Did anything in this game? We have the full Auburn preview. Don't need to go full into the Auburn preview. But did you see anything in Creighton from this game, or were you reminded of anything in this game from Creighton that gives you more confidence in them moving forward?
I would definitely say more confidence. Their depth sucks, but it's a really good team. And I mean, Ashworth showed me a lot today. I still have not completely shaken. Remember when he first joined Creighton last year and I was like, dude, this
The
guy,
first half
he's
of the
not.
season was rough.
Yes. He turned it on in the second half and was really good, but it still felt like if he is your primary ball handler, there was a cap on how good your team could be. And I would even say I dismissed this Creighton team as soon as Pop Isaacs went down. Obviously, I flipped my stance on them throughout the year. Didn't they? They won, I think, 7 or 8 games in a row during Big East play. That was like, oh, okay. Uh, it was 9 games in a row. Shout out to McDermott. Like
Yeah, they
that,
went on
that
a good
dude can
stretch.
coach. Yeah. And again, I like the offense truly is gorgeous and it's a ton of fun to watch. But I also think Ashworth is I mean, he's benefited a lot from Jemiah Neal in this game, but he's another one of those dudes where it's like you were playing on primarily losing basketball teams throughout your career, and to have a moment like this where you go out and set a career high in a high stakes game, and I mean, you look at just the way he played down the stretch in the Big East tournament, and had some really nice moments in the stretch run of the season as well. It's like they're gonna have to probably play Kalk, Ashworth, and Neal close to 40 minutes against Auburn. But with how Auburn kind of did the sleepwalking thing for stretches of that Alabama State game, to where I think there could be an opportunity for Creighton to really pull off a shocker. I think
Yeah.
the spurt ability of their offense, even though I know what the numbers say to where they're not quite as efficient as what you would like, they still have spurt ability, get out and run. And like, I mean, I keep even replaying that dunk that Neal had that really sealed the game. Like they can push tempo, they can get out in a hurry. And yeah, I'm a lot more confident in them giving Auburn a scare after this one than I was going into it. And I would say this tells us more that Creighton's a pretty good team as opposed to just like Louisville was in a bad league and we should have seen this coming. I don't really think
Right.
that's the case. I still think Louisville's a quality team.
Yeah, this wasn't the Clemson performance. This was a solid performance from Louisville. And then when Rain Smith went down, things kind of went shaky from there.
Mhm.
But a good win for Creighton.
Can
Good
I
win
can
for
I
Creighton.
can I add one more note about Louisville?
Absolutely.
There was one stretch, Louisville's down 12 after Hepburn. He knifed through the lane and had that circus finish. So sick. Like I can't remember who was guarding him, but he just like shook him out of his shoes to get to the hoop. And Jemiah Neal, on the other hand, draws like a questionable foul call. It's like, okay, they just lost all the momentum. But Kalk turns it over. They get out on the break, And it's like Terrence Edwards had a wide open transition three that would have cut the lead to 9. And you could tell that crowd was ready to go crazy. He bricks it. Then shortly after, Pat Kelsey gets the tee. And then we had water bottle gate. And I just kind of want to talk about that stretch felt really important. Not that it's I although it was more so my segue into talking about this water bottle situation because
Yeah,
I we got some like grade A commentary on this water bottle being thrown to the court. That was like one of the highlights of the game for me.
but just telling about the game itself. Just telling about the game itself. I do not condone throwing water bottles on the court, but it felt like Louisville was pushing and it was close, right?
Yeah.
Like it was close to making it a game again, and for all that to happen is just again making a bad thing worse. Same thing as shooting all those threes in a row and letting a run snowball. You just kind of cut it short there.
It is March, and that means that March Madness is upon us. And if you are looking for a place to play, Underdog Fantasy has you covered. Sign up and deposit using code SLEEPERS, that's code SLEEPERS, to receive up to $1,000 in bonus credit plus a free pick. Head over to Underdog Fantasy today and use promo code SLEEPERS to take advantage of this amazing offer.